Yo, editing Krono here really quick at the start of this video. It's a long video. It's a 15-minute video that I turned into like 35 minutes. It's going to be a little longer because of this intro. Just want to have that quick disclaimer. I have a problem with talking. Can't help myself. I enjoy it. Looked into how I was going to edit this down, and honestly, I like everything that I said in this video itself. So I want to leave it all in. Feels organic, feels great. If that's not really your cup of tea, I'm going to mention it in the video itself, but I'll leave a link in the video description. Just check out Kathy's original video. It's shorter, it's more concise, straight to the point. Curious about what I have to think about it though? Enjoy. Say a lot. Anyway, back to current Chrono. Yo, what is going on, my fellow weebs? Chrono here, and welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be reacting to a video from a fellow PSO2 content creator by the name of Kathy. Kathy's a good friend of the channel. Recently hit over 1K subs. Super happy to see that happened from the last. I'm not gonna say it's from the last video that we reacted to, but after the last video we reacted to, they hit over the 1K subs. So super awesome to see that happen. Very, very excited for them. If you guys don't know who Kathy is a detector in the community that does like PSO2 opinion videos and things of that sort. Does some guides for Techter. You should definitely check them out. They're super, super, super cool. But today we'll be reacting to one of their videos, a PSO opinion video, one of the segments that they do, about a subject that I think, honestly, a lot of people are curious about, not only in this context, but in the context of every single class. So when he does Techter need a renewal? Now, I knew the moment that Bouncer got this renewal, every single person that has a grievance with their class is going to be on this bandwagon of my class needs to be reworked, my class needs to be rebalanced, so on and so forth. And while I do believe there are some classes that need some changes, I don't know if it's going to be on the same level. Now, let me give you guys my mindset going into this from the very start. Well, sorry, jumping ahead of myself. But before we do that, if you guys are new here, I'm Krono, I cover PSO2 content. Would much appreciate the subscribers. Work our way towards that 10K mark. Hopefully soon, man. I don't know by when. hopefully we can. If you enjoy the content, just sub, man. I've got more to come, and we've got a lot of really interesting things on the horizon. So stick around. I think you guys will really enjoy it. And in case you're thinking to yourself, well, why would I watch you reacting to this video? I want to just watch the video. It'll be linked in the video description. Go check it out. If you actually honestly feel free, watch Kathy's video all the way through first, then come back and watch my video as I go down or as I go through it. Now, one thing to mention is, though Kathy and I are, we are on good terms. We're decent friends. We don't always agree about everything. So this may not be me agreeing with what Kathy says, but take it all in good fun. Kathy's an awesome individual. Love him to death. All right, let's pop over to the video and let's take a look. All right. So like I said, this is something that I've honestly, and it's not just Kathy, every person in my comments after the renewal got announced talked about Techter, talked about Braver, talked about Hunter, talked about Ranger. I mean, everything under the sun when it comes to renewals. They didn't talk about Waker. I wonder why. They also didn't talk about Slayer. Anyway, but these people all talked about renewals for their classes, so on and so forth. Sorry. So today we'll be discussing a possible renewal for Techter might look like. I don't think it's complete overhaul is necessary. There are a lot of issues with both Juan and Talus and our class identity. So again, this is going to be a situation where we may not align fully, but I also am not a Techter main. I'm outside looking in. I'm looking at other Techters who play the class, Kathy and my other friends who also play Techter and how well they perform. As far as the class goes and its performance, I think Techter actually does fairly well in party play. Solo play leaves a bit to be desired, but Techter isn't really centered around solo play. It's centered around its support while also pushing out damage and also providing other means of support, whether defensive or offensive, so or utility and resource. But yeah, we've rambled on for 3 minutes. The video hasn't even started. Let's go. So we're starting this out with the meme.
Man, that bouncer renewal sure does look sexy. Oh,
yes, it does.
Fellow wand lovers, didn't see you there. Have you seen the latest headline? If not, then I strongly suggest checking it out because it was a really big one. Perhaps the most important part is the announcement of a bouncer overhaul. Bouncer definitely needed it, but people immediately started to wonder if other classes, including Techter, might also receive a renewal treatment like this.
Yes, they did.
Future.
Instantaneously.
Let's have a discussion about it, shall we?
Talus sure does? Okay, all right. Just snap thoughts on Talus. Disagree. Sometimes weapons are relegated to specific tasks, and it's okay for them to be relegated in such a way. Now, if you're someone who believes every weapon should be able to do everything on its own without any other form of support, then yes. However, Talus is one of the best AoE weapons in the game. Not that other weapons can't do this, but Talus does it so well and so comfortably. I don't think so. Personally, at least.
Before we start, I'd like to point out that a class receiving an overhaul this early sets a very strong precedent. If you watched my history on Techter video, you'll remember that Techter in PSO2 was in dire need of an overhaul very early on in the game's life. The devs absolutely hated the idea of overhauling anything, and that's why till this day many OG classes in PSO2 are plagued with poorly designed weapons, skills, or even skill rings. PSO2 didn't start overhauling classes until it was too late. Luckily, this isn't the case here, and while the jury is still out on how good this bouncer overhaul is going to be, it is very reassuring that the devs are willing to take a serious look at their classes, and redo them if needed. I'd also like to preface this video by saying that I'm not a min-max player. I'm just a nerd who likes to crunch numbers a lot, but lacks the finger dexterity to back it up. I'm semi-casual about my gameplay. I care enough to make needlessly detailed Excel sheets for myself, but not enough to start jet boot breakdancing and encore jumping. So, with that out of the way,
Worth mentioning, because you do on Techter. Unfortunate.
does Techter need an overhaul? First of all, why would any class need an overhaul to begin with? Bouncer, statistically was fine, it did good damage, that wasn't the problem. What was problematic was that certain mechanics were either exploitable, didn't work correctly, or were simply unfun. Personally,
That last part was real big. Always said bouncer hit like a Mack truck. It also handled like one.
speaking, encore jumping, while spamming weapon action during Fnatic Blade, isn't exactly how I imagine a fun gameplay experience.
No, it sucks. I hate it. I absolutely despise it.
With Bouncer that a large portion of the community were planning a hashtag #SayBouncer movement. Though they didn't even get a chance to go public.
Hold on a minute. Who was planning this? Ain't nobody told me about this. Y'all really let me alone advocate for Bouncer so many times, and no one told me this was going to be a thing? First off, everyone who did is catching a stray.
With it because the devs were faster.
Just for that, I'm demoting Aqua in my alliance. And if you guys know, you know.
But my point is that this overhaul didn't need to happen, but it did happen. The devs learned their lesson from ignoring the issues of a class in PSO2. At least I hope they did, because Talus has many issues to talk about. Now,
Debatable.
do I believe Wand needs an overhaul? Not an complete overhaul, but there are a few problems with this weapon.
Okay, so maybe we
Let's
are
start
more
with
in line than I
Wand
think.
lovers. Ever since the SEGA update, Wand gameplay loop has solidified to revolve around Revoke Pursuit. Basically, the faster you can spam this button, the higher your DPS will be. Prior to SEGA, we had two types of Furies, normal and strong. With the SEGA update they added a third version, so we renamed normal Furies to level 1, strong Furies to level 2, and the new one became level 3. The damage is the same between these three, but resource generation differs between them.
Hold on. Spreadsheets. I gotta understand this. So I'm not like just totally going off the cuff. All right, so give different Furies, photonic Furies. So Furies on normal attacks, Furies on photon arts, and Furies on counters and charged. Okay, so Techter's in the comments. You guys are going to tell me about this, but is this just how it behaves during photonic Fury? So counters and charged, charge SS. Okay, I think I understand this, but I probably don't, to be fair.
Generation differs between them. This is important when talking about Wand lovers. Wand lovers is supposed to be Techter's burst damage button, in which normal attacks become supercharged, and your primary attack for the duration. At least I think that's the idea behind the skill, because
Okay, so unless this changed, it was dumb. It didn't do anything. All it did was it made it so you had guard frames, you had no hit stop. Yeah, like it was dumb. Okay, so they did add a skill. Okay, so boosts normal attack damage, speeds up normal attacks, improves normal attack gap closing. Okay, so this is nice. All right, Maybe this has always been here and just never noticed it. But like I remember at a certain point in time pressing wand levers while I was leveling Techter, and all it did was give me guard frames and move me toward my target. So maybe this is added in one of the updates. I just didn't notice it because leveling up other classes, honestly, you don't have to play them to level them up anymore.
Wand levers isn't really doing any burst damage at all.
Not really,
the
no.
first and second step of the normal attack combo are weak and end up bottlenecking the overall DPS potential of a full normal attack combo. The buff ends up only benefiting combos that skip these two normal attacks entirely. There is also this annoying inconsistent bug where block counters will have hit stop for some reason, and completely negate the potency buff you're supposed to get from wand levers.
So, funny enough, that's exactly how BAPS functions. You'll notice an insane amount of hit stop on one of your abilities whenever you Blade Arts parry step counter. So that's how you know it actually worked. But I didn't realize that it caused you to lose the extra damage. That's wild.
And on top of all that, normal
At least for
attacks
Tetris, I mean.
wand levers will still use level 1 Photonic Furies, slowing down the amount of resources you build, and thus lowering your overall damage. So, I think this area definitely could see some improvements.
Okay, so to be fair, the part that's the bug that screws up the damage and that messes the resource, I think that needs to be fixed. That is a fix. The other portion of it, like I know that realistically it'd be great if it buffed everything, like you want just a normal attack spam. But the idea is for you to get like with skip arts is your third and fourth normals, I feel like are the ones that are important. I'd argue that you drop the damage from first and second normal and boost the damage into third and fourth, incentivizing you primarily to only PA into normal attacks. That might create some form of weird gameplay loop for Techters. Maybe I'm crazy, but I don't know. I feel like that's worth.
Fixing this bug with block counter, increasing the potency of first and second normal attack, and making sure normal attacks inflict level 2 Photonic Furies would be a step in the right direction. But honestly, I'd love if wand levers applied to photon arts as well. Gaining attack speed and faster charge time on Swift Smash alone would solidify wand levers as a really strong.
I'd agree that's fair. I think that's a fair
also like
fair
for wand
for sure.
to receive a short charge skill. 30 seconds duration with a 90-second cooldown is simply too long for what it's needed for. Most burst phases don't last longer than 10 seconds. I'd also
I see the saying, yeah.
Tracking on counters wasn't exclusive to wand levers. There are so many counters I've missed simply because I was either too high or too low.
Yeah, that's
really
something that should
be a
exist.
problem, especially since some other weapons have hit scan counters and never miss. Now, let me be a little controversial. Light techniques suck harder than me on a Sunday night.
That's not controversial. They're awful. Light techs suck real bad. Like really bad.
I don't know who at the dev team thought that. The primary element used against Dark Falls should have the same accuracy as my intoxicated father figure. In PSO2, Grants never missed because it was a hitscan attack, but when transitioning to NGS, it feels like they threw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah, it's real bad. Really bad.
Elemental gimmick. Force players are getting punished when they're unable to refresh it every 10 seconds, and Dark Falls enemies love to waste time in the untargetable realm. Meanwhile, for Techter and Bouncer players, this skill simply doesn't offer anything because it's not designed with burst damage in mind.
It's a nice set and forget.
Techniques are designed around their average damage. Let's take Megid's Sphere for example. It takes 3 uncharged techniques at roughly 300 DPS to gather 3 spheres. These spheres then supercharge the next charge technique into a nearly 600 DPS attack, but on average this entire combo has roughly 400 DPS. However, because the bulk of the damage is backloaded, this is very beneficial to us Techters and Bouncers. When we perform Fomelgen, we instantly accumulate 3 Megid spheres. This gives us access to that supercharged dark technique without having to waste our time on this low DPS part of the combo.
Exactly.
Light techniques don't have that. Even wind and fire techniques have a shred of burst damage, but light...
Keep in mind, she also didn't mention the fact that forces don't have the... I mean, they have Fomelgen, right? But like, they don't have the added benefit of doing something else that's going to build up those orbs for them outside of just casting the tech. Like, casting tech's all they got. Either do that or they have to do Fomelgen. That's it. Those are their only 2 choices. Because if not, oh god, it sucks so bad. Yeah, Force is one of the few classes that I'd actually agree probably needs a renewal. Either that or just text in general.
Techniques are solely designed for continuous use, which doesn't mesh with Techter or Bouncer. Tech customization might fix it though.
It
I
might.
didn't expect
It's worth
this to
mentioning.
happen, but it seems that the customization options do also refer to skill tree skills.
Mm-hmm.
So this has the potential to change grants to behave similarly to Foyi brand, which would be much more useful for us.
Substantially.
While on the topic of techniques, they have always been the weakest link in our rotation.
It's
In
because
order
they
to
suck
fix
for
this,
everyone.
I propose skills that incentivize using techniques after a revoke. A couple of technique-related buffs that improve the process of building the elemental gimmicks naturally would do the trick. This would result in a tech phase, so to speak, and would solidify Techter as a hybrid class. The devs always wanted to give Techter a tech phase, but could never quite get it. I think this time they are really close to pulling it off, they just have to commit to it.
Funny enough,
Alternatively,
Bouncer
we
could do the
just
exact same
eliminate
thing.
charge time on the next technique after a revoke, though I feel like that would be a very boring solution.
That would also be very strong. So you'd have to be very careful about that. However, I agree. I think it should be the same thing. Maybe like a short charge, not short charge, but like a quick charge mechanic. Tectors get it after they revoke. I think Jet Boot Bouncers should get something similar after PAs or PA combos or something along those lines, as they still have to charge techs and it feels awful.
Some general quality of life improvements for techniques would also be nice. We don't have to be as good as Force with techniques, but they should
No.
feel like a more natural part of our kit, rather than just the button we press after a revoke. Now that we covered unpolished things about Wand, let's talk about Talus. This weapon has
Like, it should be something that you press after your revoke, yes, but it should be in a specific way. Like the fact that you charge it faster or something along those lines should definitely be the case. Like in my mind, I can see like a mage versus a sork. And that's gonna seem weird for some people, I know, but like if you're looking at like a mage cast like a bunch of spells versus a sork cast like a few spells really, really hard, it's that sort of mindset, right? Like where Force is casting this huge spell or casting those techs, dealing massive damage consistently, while Techter can just weave in those casts at a faster rate. I feel like would be better.
a lot of issues, but I believe the biggest one is that the weapon simply hasn't evolved since it was released. Every skill released since launch is a simple number increase in one way or another. And this wouldn't be that big of an issue if Talus' core gameplay loop was incredible, but sadly it is very monotonous and underdesigned. As mentioned in the previous video, a lot of buttons we end up using are DPS losses, some skill tree skills are either useless or actively detrimental, and Tricky Capacitor takes way too long to build up, and doesn't deal nearly as much damage as Wand.
Yeah,
On top of that, the
that
step
is another
counter
problem.
is harder to perform than most weapon action alternatives, and it doesn't deal as much damage as you'd expect from a counter.
Step counter is always harder to perform than weapon action alternatives. I don't know why. Call it a skill issue. Maybe it's my problem. Maybe it's a skill issue. But to me, pressing a weapon action when a target is hitting you versus stepping into an ability to step counter it is always been easier.
This leads to a weapon that is designed with Force in mind, even though it serves a redundant purpose, since Rod is already a superior ranged weapon, while not providing enough benefits for Techter, who would otherwise benefit greatly from a ranged weapon. If there is one thing the devs need to overhaul, it is this weapon. I want Talus to be good, but if the devs continue to ignore its issues, then the Talus redesign they did, when transitioning from PSO2 to NGS, will end up being a wasted effort. Now, let's talk about something that kinda hampers the performance of tech classes, and that's downs. Half of our shift to potency is tied to downs. Force deals 30% more damage during a down, and Bouncer increases down factor accumulation for everyone who attacks the same target. By design, there is nothing wrong with the system, but there are a few quirks that in my opinion the devs should be more considerate of. What am I talking about? Well, you might have noticed a trend with Dark Falls raids, but downs are highly curated in those quests.
And they don't count.
Dark Falls Interception Round 2, you'll find it's very hard to trigger an elemental down during Phase 1, but it's very easy to do so in Phase 2. Meanwhile, physical downs are outright impossible in Phase 1, and in Phase 2 the only body part that can contribute to a physical down is the head, which is the very last body part you'll attack before he dies. At least we get some special downs when breaking arms. That's more than I can say about Dark Falls Aegis, because Aegis simply can't be physically downed, and it's very unlikely you'll get more than one break and elemental down. There are no special downs either, so half of our shift to potency rarely goes to use. This was luckily improved with Dark Falls Solace. It is very easy to get 2 breaks, 2 physical downs when the head is targetable, and special downs when breaking its shoulders and staff. Overall, I'd say it's a well-designed fight, but I omitted elemental downs in here because unfortunately, it's very unlikely that one tech user will trigger it by themselves. In my runs, where I was using a Justitian Wand and Bouncer subclass, I simply am unable to trigger an elemental down by myself. I need at least one other tech user in my party to be able to do it. In my opinion, it shouldn't be like this. It diminishes Techter's contribution to the fight a little bit, but I'm nitpicking at that point.
Okay, so this brings up a very interesting concept that we have to kind of look into, and one that I'm not sure where I stand with on this entire process. So Bouncer helps build up downs, both physical and elemental. Techter, funny enough, is actually one of the best. Correct me if I'm mistaken. I might be wrong about this. I'm pretty sure this is the case still. Techter's the best at building up elemental downs. Almost positive that's the case. Actually, better than Force. So if you think about it, and this is just on massive bosses that you can't really build these downs on that easily, but having its damage tied into downs, some of its damage, like from Shifta and all that stuff, does kind of make sense as the best class being able to proc those downs. You are getting that extra amount of damage. And on top of that, Force also gets extra damage on downs too. So not only is it a Shifta, but Force is also getting itself extra damage on downs. The problem that's a little awkward or weird is, one, you don't really need a Bouncer for the extra elemental down in most cases. I mean, I guess in this fight specifically, what Kathy's mentioning, it would be nice if they had, like, let's say, a Techter and a Bouncer to help proc the elemental down. The two of them together probably would be like the best case scenario. Like, you don't really need one in most situations, but at the same time, like, if you have them, you end up proccing things way too early. So if you have like a Force, Techter, and a Bouncer, which was rare to see all in the same party, but it's possible, you're going to proc elemental downs like crazy. However, the Techter in most cases with a little bit of help can proc the elemental down. Like just a Techter and a Bouncer would be enough, which isn't a difficult ask. In a lot of cases, you do have those two classes together in a lot of situations. It's just a weird spot because then, like, where do you leave Force? Should Force only be good at doing damage and not getting the elemental down? Should Techter always be the best? Where does Bouncer fit in? Should it be necessary? If Techter could proc it on its own, why would you even have a Bouncer there in the first place? Because a Bouncer's not going to proc it on its own. Should Bouncer be there to help Force proc it? Like, these are the questions you kind of look at because you have to think of party play and solo play. Solo play a little bit less because the game is more focused around party play. It's like 90 to 95% party play and like 5% to 10% solo play when you really think about it. But like, where does that go, right? Because Techters get the extra damage, but so do extra damage on downs if used with their Shifta, but then so do Forces with their skills. Bouncers if they take sub fighter, if they have a lot of crit, if they're not taking, Slayer sub. But I mean, Slayer sub still is a thing. It's kind of that weird balance that techs kind of make this. It's just an extra level of annoyance that techs kind of push into the entire equation that I'm not really even sure how to qualitate, whatever the word is.
Overall, I think Dark Falls Solace is the best designed Dark Falls we've gotten so far in NGS.
For sure.
I just
100%
wanted to
agree.
draw attention to the fact that our support with Shifta is a little bit inconsistent because of the enemy design. And that leads me to my next topic. Techter is a support class, however the amount of support was greatly stripped down compared to PSO2, and it's an area I wish the devs would expand on so that our contribution to the party feels more meaningful. In PSO2, we had at least one support tech per element, on top of some cool skills that amplified those abilities further.
Okay. So Shifta, D-Band, Zanverse, Zondeal, Resta, Reverser, Megaverse, and then of course the overdrive skill. So yeah. So this has been combined into one. These don't exist. This is now items, and this doesn't exist. This was pretty broken for healing people, and you could cast this consistently. Of all of these skills, I would like to see these two make a return. This one here would be really cool from a DPS perspective. My concern is that like players already with the proper class setups are absolutely dumpstering things. It's interesting because Techters offensively are not the best supports, but defensively are. Shift a D-Band, you cannot knock how useful D-Band actually is in taking care of things, but the better you play, the less you really need it. It's not really making any differences there. Where Ranger offers the more offensive support, Techter gives you a good chunk of offense with a good chunk of defense. I would like to see something like Zondeal return. Zondeal pulls enemies together. So Techter's be able to do that. But like I mentioned this beforehand, I want to see this return. I want to see Grav Bomb return as well. So Rangers can also pull things together for us, while Techers can maybe spam this a bit more. Maybe have this on a skill with like a, I don't know, 15-second cooldown or something like that, or 10-second cooldown, something low that can be used pretty often, but not so low that it can be spammed infinitely, or so high that it's almost feels worthless. I don't think Megaverse can ever come back because it would dwarf the usage of any other form of healing items. If you have a Techter, Techter basically would be able to just single top up an entire party consistently, because you could literally single tap Megaverse and attack something and fully heal. It was insanely powerful. And Xanverse quite literally broke the game to the point where they had to nerf the heck out of it. So I would be afraid to see Xanverse come back. Xanverse essentially took all the damage you dealt in the actual field itself, and it multiplied it, or not multiplied it, but it did basically a wind damage attack toward the target for the damage you were dealing. So basically it was just extra damage on top of the damage you were dealing. So if a Techter knew how to use it, you would place the field down and your entire party would stand in it as they were dealing damage. If this were to come back, it would have to be like party specific. It would have to not be as powerful as it was beforehand, because it would make Techter mandatory for damage or for speed running in groups and things like that from a damage perspective. So I want to see this. These are items now. My opinion on these are kind of meh. I don't know that this can ever exist again, and this would have to be very, very, very careful.
A decent chunk of it was streamlined and carried over into NGS. We even got a Twal's Overdrive. Yes, I have
You stole a Twal's Overdrive. Give it back.
learned French since the Scion video. You can stop bullying me now.
Whoa.
A lot of support techniques have been left on the cutting room floor, which is honestly a shame, because some of these
Do not bully Kathy. Don't bully Kathy. Star is the name. We're calling it that from now on.
could be incorporated really easily into New Genesis. Let's start with anti. The devs don't want to make the same mistake as in PSO2, where status ailments kinda became a joke, with anti being an unlimited source of status ailment removal.
Yeah.
One rewards you and your healed ally by making your PP recovery faster than the speed of light.
Yeah.
Removing it entirely was the best choice. I'd like overemphasis to be expanded with a status ailment cleansing effect, as well as receive a short charge skill that will reduce the cooldown from 5 to 3 minutes. This will keep the cleansing effect to a very limited resource, and the skill won't take half the quest to charge up anymore. Next on the list is Xanverse.
Yeah, give Anti on a 1 minute cooldown.
Now, I'm personally not a big fan of Xanverse. In PSO2, Xanverse is a very short field that lasts for roughly 5 seconds, and deals any damage dealt inside back towards the enemy, as wind damage in a 5-to-1 ratio. What I don't like about this field is that because it's always available, and has a short duration, you rarely get to do your own rotation because you have to constantly refresh the field. It's not much of an issue on Wand because PSO2 Wand had no rotation, but on Gunblade it's rather jarring. An easy solution to all of these issues would be to simply make Xanverse part of our rotation.
To give context, Techter by the very end was Techter Slay or Techter Luster, and you would play Gunblade as your main weapon. That was actually the strongest form of Techter, and in some cases would deal more damage than Etwal if you played it well enough, or close to. Those are in very, very, very specific situations, but yeah, it did tilt me. You're right.
This can be achieved easily by making it appear after an elemental revoke, and this would also allow Xanverse to take the element that was discharged as well. The only issue with this approach is that Talus wouldn't have access to it. Now, Zondeal is one of the techs I'm almost convinced will not return, which is a shame because it's a really
want it.
one for Wand.
I feel like Zondeal would be
I
great.
mentioned it in my guide video, but Photonic Fury stacking from PSO2 still exists in NGS. What I'm talking about is the phenomenon when enemies are close to each other, and you hit them both with one swing, causing a Photonic Fury on both. But because they're so close to each other, the AoE effect ends up hitting each of them, which exponentially skyrockets Wand's AoE DPS. In PSO2 we could use Zondeal to consistently trigger this stacking effect, but over time more and more enemies developed resistance towards Zondeal, and now we don't even have Zondeal at all. If the devs ever change their mind about Zondeal, I'd love for them to add a similar effect to the second swing of Wave Crash. And hey, maybe that will be one option to choose from when customizing Wave Crash. I honestly don't care for Megaverse, and on that note, I don't think bringing back Resta as a separate spammable button would add anything to Techter.
Nope.
Resta Signa are already plenty. Even in Dark Falls Solace on launch, I never ran out of these things because they just kept spawning throughout the fight. So I don't think adding more avenues for healing is needed. 2 Shifta and Debin buffs I missed from PSO2 are Shifta critical and even in Dark Falls Solace on launch, I never ran out of these things because they just kept spawning throughout the fight.
Subtle flex.
So I don't think adding more avenues for healing is needed.
Maybe I just suck.
2 Shifta and Debin buffs I missed from PSO2 are Shifta critical and Debin toughness. When Slayer came out and had crit rate as its class gimmick, I was almost convinced that the new skills each class would get with the release of version 2 would include some conditional crit rate modifiers. But that
Yeah, I
didn't
was too.
happen, and that is just a bummer. Meanwhile, Debin toughness increased your max HP by so much that it was hard not to notice a Techter's presence in the quest.
Yeah, it was kind of ridiculous.
NCS Shifted Debin feels much weaker because of the lack of these skills, and I don't think their contribution is nearly as good as Ranger, whose Blight rounds increase damage dealt by up to 25%.
Yeah, but the
You
thing is that you have
probably noticed the
defensive
games of the
buff
changes
as
I am
well.
opposing. None of them introduce any new buttons to the game.
That's very
Instead,
important.
fleshing out buttons that already exist. This is simply to prevent button bloat, which was a big issue in PSO2, and
Huge
Techter
issue.
still suffers from to an extent. Compound techniques taking up 3 buttons on the palette is the biggest contributor to that, but I'm not exactly sure how to streamline this in an intuitive way. On top of that, the multi-weapon system further snowballs bloat out of control. But those are just my thoughts on a possible Techter renewal. I'm sure some of you have your own ideas and grievances with the class that I might have missed. Share them in the comments below. I'd love to hear what everyone has to say on the matter. As always, huge shout out to my lovely channel members supporting this channel. You can join for just $1 a month. I hope everyone has a fantastic day and that the Bouncer rework turns out to be fantastic. Anyway, I'll see you in the next one. Take care.
Okay. I dig it. Honestly, like, a few things to note on. First off, there'll be a link in the video description. Jump over to Kathy's channel, subscribe, check them out. They're super awesome. I know at the very beginning of this, I said that, and this, it just reminded me, I'm not sure why, but at the very beginning of this, really early on, where is it? Does Techter need a renewal? Talus sure does. And I said, I don't really agree with that. I don't think it really needs a renewal. I'll be honest, I can't tell you why I think that. Everything Kathy said about Talus makes sense to me. This is why that would be super boring and unfun. And I feel like that means it needs a renewal. However, it does set the precedent that we have to look at weapons from the perspective of every single weapon needs to be able to perform on its own. And yes, I know there's some people that love Talus and that really want Talus to be amazingly good. But there are also that are totally fine with Talus being relegated to the AoE weapon. And in some cases, I'd be afraid of it losing that identity, that it's able to just be that comfortable of an AoE weapon. And yes, I'm aware there are other weapons on those classes that can AoE very well. Zonde is a thing. You're able to smack things with, wave crash, so on and so forth. However, it is worth mentioning that Talus is probably one of the most comfy AoE weapons, one of those comfy PSE weapons to use in the game. It is so easy to just spam like bullets in that little 3 projectile with Z aiming. So comfortable, so simple, so straightforward. It is just turn brain off, deal damage, smash through PSEs. If there was a good way to keep that and then make the class more interesting from like a single part or from a single target perspective, or a mid-weapon ratio from a single target perspective, then I 100% agree. I think it could use a renewal. However, outside of that, I don't know what else to say about it. And that comes from just my lack of use of the weapon. And again, it depends on your thought process. Do you believe it should be an A weapon? Do you believe it should be a single target weapon? Do you believe that weapons should be relegated to specific things? Or do you think every weapon should be able to do everything pretty decently? The only thing I wanted to mention was, I think they mentioned this during Revoke Pursuit element first. Yeah. Oh yeah, this one was the one I want to talk about as well. The concern about this would be that you need to make sure that whenever you go into a down, that you essentially would be going into a revoke immediately. That way you could get the most out of a Xanverse use while everyone is stacked up. considering that realistically it was part of Techter's job to provide damage to, like, basically they did more damage using Xanverse because that was their damage, that was their cast. But it'd be important to make sure that that was how you went into each of those phases. Outside of that, the only thing I was thinking about was Techter's support role. It is worth mentioning again, like I mentioned beforehand, that yes, Ranger does provide more offensive damage. However, Techter provides more universal support overall. I think having an anti skill would be cool. I think having it like maybe on a 1 minute cooldown would be nice, but having that extra button would be a huge pain in the butt. So what Kathy proposed would be adding it to the overdrive skill and having that be down to a 3 minute cooldown. I think that'd be fine. I think that'd be fair. Realistically, like, we don't need all the PP it gives us. Maybe give you back half of your PP and boost your PP up, and then that would be like a 3 minute cooldown. I feel like that's totally fine. That I think would be a great change for Techter. That's about it. That's pretty much all I have to say on the matter. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I know this is like a 15-minute video, but 35-minute video on my end. Yeah, I know. This is reactions. This is what we do when we talk about these sort of things. Anyway, let me know what you guys think. I'll be checking out the comments. I'm curious. I'm really bad at ending videos. Take care, everyone. Peace out.